Welcome to episode 108 of Norse Myths, Legends, and Folktales. My name is MyLinda Butterworth, and today we tell the folktale about a queen who has 12 sons and trades them away to have a daughter, and how the daughter rescues her brothers through silence and diligence in the 12 Wild Ducks, or Snow White and Rose Red. Once there was a queen who was out sledding. It was winter, and the ground was covered by fresh snow. When she had traveled some distance, the queen got a nosebleed and had to get out of the sleigh. As she stood up by the fence and looked down at the red blood and the white snow, she came to think that she had 12 sons and no daughter. And then she said to herself, I had a daughter as white as snow and as red as blood, I would easily give up my sons. No sooner had she said it than she was approached by a witch. A daughter you shall have, she said, and she will be as white as snow and as red as blood. And then your sons will be mine, but you can have them until you have your child baptized. When the time came, the queen gave birth to a daughter, and she was as white as snow and as red as blood, as the witch had promised, and therefore they called her Snow White and Rose Red. There was a great joy in the royal court, and the queen was immensely happy. But when she remembered what she had promised the witch, she had a silversmith make 12 silver spoons, one for each prince. And then she had them make another one, and she gave it to Snow White and Rose Red. Once, as the princess was baptized, the princes were transformed into 12 wild ducks and flew away, and they saw no more of them. They were gone, and gone they remained. The princess grew up, becoming a radiant beauty, but she was often so timid and sad, and no one could understand what was wrong. But then one evening the queen was also sad, for she must have had many oppressive thoughts when her sons came to mind, and she said to Snow White and Rose Red, "Why are you so sad, my child? If something is wrong with you, say so. If there's something you want, you shall have it." "Oh, it is so desolate," said Snow White and Rose Red. "Everyone else has siblings, but I am so alone. I have none. That is why I mourn." "You also had siblings, my daughter," said the queen. "I had 12 sons who were your brothers, but I gave them all up to have you," she said. And then she told everything that had happened. When the princess heard that, she had no rest. No matter how much the queen cried and beseeched, it did not help. She wanted to leave, for she thought she was to blame for everything. And finally, the princess left the palace. She walked and she walked far out into the wide world. You would not think that such a beautiful, timid maiden had the strength to go so far. Soon she found herself walking in the large forest after hiking for days and night. Then suddenly she got tired and sat down on a mound, and there she fell asleep. Then she dreamed that she went further into the woods to a small wooden hut, and there she found her brothers. Immediately she woke up, and right in front of her she saw an ascending path in the green moss, and that path went deeper into the forest. She followed it, and at long last she came to such a small wooden hut as she had dreamed of. When she came into the living room, there was no one inside, but there were 12 beds, and 12 chairs, and 12 spoons, and 12 things of every single item. When she saw it, she was as happy as she had been for years, for she immediately understood that her brothers lived there, and that it was they who owned the beds and the chairs and the spoons. She added more wood in the fireplace, swept the floor and made the beds, cooked supper and cleaned and decorated as well as she could, And when she had cooked and prepared food for them all, she ate herself, but she forgot her spoon on the table, and then she crawled up into the youngest brother's bed and made herself comfortable. Not before she had gone to bed, she heard a rustling and whistling in the air, and then all 12 wild ducks came rushing in. But the moment they crossed the threshold, they were princes. "Oh, how nice and warm it is," they said. "God bless the one who had added wood to the fire and cooked us such a delicious meal." And then they each took a silver spoon, looking forward to eat. But when each had taken their spoon, there was still one left, and it was so similar to the others that they could not distinguish it from their own. They looked at each other, pondering. "This is our sister's spoon," they said, "and if there's a spoon here, she cannot be far away." "If this is our sister's spoon, and she is here, she will be killed, for she is to blame for all the pain we suffer," said the eldest of the princes, as she lay listening under the bed. "No," said the youngest, "it would be wrong to kill her for that. Our suffering is not her doing. If anyone is to blame, it is our mother." Then they began to look for her high and low, and at last they searched under all the beds as well. And when they came to the youngest princess' bed, they found her and dragged her out. The eldest prince again wanted her killed, but she cried and she begged for her life. "Oh, do not kill me," she said. "For so many years I have searched for you. If I could save you, I would gladly offer my own life." "If you wish to save," they said, "then you will be allowed to live, because if anyone can do so, you must be the one." Yes, just tell me how it can happen. Then I will do what it takes," said the princess. "You shall gather thistledown," said the princess, "and you shall card and spin and weave the wool, and when you have done so, you shall cut out and sew 12 caps, 12 shirts, and 12 cloths of it, one for each of us. And while you do it, do not speak, or laugh, or cry. If you can manage to do so, we are saved." "But where shall I find thistledown for all those cloths and hats and shirts?" said Snow White and Rose Red. "We will show you," said the princess, and then they took her to a large marsh, so full of thistledown, dancing in the wind and glittering in the sun, that from afar it must have looked like glistening snow. Never before had the princess seen so much thistledown, and she immediately began to pick and gather the fastest she could, and when she came home in the evening, she sat down to card and spin it to yarn. And so it was for a long time. She gathered thistledown, carded and spun the wool into yarn, and in between she cared for the princes. She cooked and she made the beds for them. In the evening they came flying back home like wild ducks at night. They were princes, but then in the morning they flew away again and were wild ducks all day. But then one day, as she went out in the marshes gathering thistledown, and if I'm not mistaken, the last time she had to go out there, the young king who ruled the kingdom was out hunting. As he was riding past the marshes, he saw her. He stopped and wondered why the lovely maiden could be who went out into the marsh gathering thistledown. When he asked her about it, he got no answer, which made him ponder even more, and he decided he liked this girl so much that he wanted to take her home to the castle and marry her. So he told his servants to go fetch her and put her on his horse. Snow White and Rose Red, she twisted her hands and pointed to the sacks. She had all her work in, and when the king realized she wanted to take them with her, he told his servants that they should bring the sacks as well. When they had done so, the princess eventually came with him, for the king was both a kind man and a handsome man, and he was gentle and kind to her as a lark. But when they came home to the royal court, the old queen, who was his stepmother, saw Snow White and Rose Red, and she became so angry and jealous of the princess's beauty that she said to the king, "Can you not see it? The girl you have taken with you and who wants to marry is a witch. She neither speaks nor laughs or cries." The king, however, chose not to listen. Instead, he threw a great wedding and married Snow White and Rose Red, and they lived in great joy and glory. By the end of the year, Snow White and Rose Red had given birth to a little prince, and the old queen became even more envious and vicious. And when it was late at night, she snuck into Snow White and Rose Red's chamber while she slept, took the child, and threw it into the snake pit. Then she cut the young queen in the finger and smeared the blood around her mouth, and then went into the king. "Come now and see," she said. "What kind of person have you taken to be your queen? Now she has eaten her own child." The king was so terrified that he was nearly weeping and said, "Yes, it must be true, since I see it before my eyes, but she will not do it again. This time I will spare her." Before the year was over, the young queen had given birth to yet another son, and with the new child the story repeated itself. The king's stepmother became even more jealous and vicious. She snuck into the queen at night while she slept, took the child, and threw it in the snake pit, cut the queen in the finger, and smeared the blood around her mouth. And then she told the king that she had eaten up this child as well. The king, grieving his son, said, "Yes, it must be true, since I see it before my eyes, but she certainly will not do it again, so I will spare her life again." Before the year was over, Snow White and Rose Red had given birth to a daughter, and as with the two boys, the old queen threw the baby girl into the snake pit. While the young queen was asleep, she cut her finger and smeared the blood on her mouth, and then went to the king and said, "Now you can come and see for yourself. Listen to what I am saying. She is a witch, and now she has upped her third child as well." The king was now so mournful that there was no consolation to him, for he knew that he could no longer spare her, but had to command that she should be burned alive on the fire. When the fire was burning, and she was to be bound to the stake, she made signs for the servants to take 12 boards and place them around the fire, and on them they lay the cloths and the hats and the shirts of her brothers. But the shirt of the youngest brother lacked the left sleeve. She had not been able to finish it. As soon as they had done this, they heard the flapping and whirring in the air, and then 12 flying wild birds came in, flying over the forest, and each one of them took his garment in his beak and flew away. "Now, do you see," said the wicked queen to the king, "that she is a witch? Hurry now and burn her before the firewood burns up." "Oh," said the king, "we have plenty of firewood. There's a whole forest at hand. I want to wait a little longer to see what will be the end of this." At that moment, the 12 princes appeared, riding on their horses as beautiful and full-grown young men. But the youngest prince had a duck wing instead of his left arm. "What is going on?" asked the princes. "My queen will be burned, for she is a witch and has eaten her own children," replied the king. "She has not eaten them," said the princess. "Speak now, sister, for you have saved us. Now save yourself." So Snow White and Rose Red finally spoke and told about everything that had happened, that every time she had fallen asleep, the wicked queen, stepmother to the king, crept into her at night, had taken her and cut her finger and smeared the blood around her mouth. And the princess took the king and brought him to a snake pit, and there lay the 3 children, playing with worms and toads, and more beautiful children have you never seen before. The king took them with him and carried them to his stepmother, and asked her what punishment she thought one should receive who could have the heart to betray an innocent queen and 3 such blessed children. "They should be strapped between 12 untamed horses, so that each horse got his share," said the old queen with a twinkle in her eye. "You have announced your own verdict, and you yourself will get to suffer it," the king said. And then the old wicked queen was tied up between 12 untamed horses, each of whom taking his share, ripping her to pieces. But Snow White and Rose Red brought the king and their children and her 12 brothers back home to their parents, and told them all that had happened. And there was great joy and delight throughout all the kingdom, for the princess was saved, and had saved her 12 brothers as well. And here is where I end my tale for today. But I'll be back with more tales, many more tales. Until then, my friends, enjoy the journey.